Welcome to today's Practice Advantage Pearl for residents and fellows. Today I'd like to talk a little bit about the employment agreement and its anatomy. First thing out of the chute is a disclaimer. I'm not legal. You will want to have legal review of your final copy of your employment agreement, and you'll want that to be done by a qualified attorney that is licensed in the state where you're going to practice medicine, that has healthcare employment law background. And if you don't know somebody that might fit those qualifications, typically your state medical association in that particular state typically will be able to provide you with 3 or 4 different firms that perhaps cover that. They're invested in making this work for you. They want to have good physicians employed in their state, so they'll find a good attorney for you to help review that. So one of the things to think about as you look at that, they're typically 17 pages long. That's the typical length of an employment agreement for a physician. Typically, you jump to Appendix A, which is in the back, and that's where the compensation formula is, meaning there are 17 pages that you should pay attention to before that, the preambles and the whereases and those kinds of things. One thing to look for is financial stability of the organization. Is that baked into the employment agreement? What do I mean by that? When were they established? Are they licensed to practice medicine in that particular state? Some of those things will be in the initial paragraphs, so you can start to look for those kind of things. Because if that's not listed there, there may be a question or two you might want to ask about that. Now, the compensation formula, which is in Appendix A, typically gets referenced earlier on in the document. So there'll be some general statements about compensation formula, and a lot of times that has to do with your bonus structure. So read that carefully. If you're not clear on how that's structured, I do recommend that you ask the employer for an Excel spreadsheet that talks about not making the target. Say you're 50% or 40% below the target if there is a bonus structure. What does that look like over a month or a quarter's period for you? Right at the target, that would be another Excel spreadsheet that I'd have them run for you. And then maybe you're blowing it out of the water, it's 30% above expectations. What does that look like? Having it simply put into an Excel spreadsheet will help you understand what that formula looks like and could or could not mean. Clear expectations. Termination clauses. Typically, you want parity with your notification. So, for example, if it's 60 days that you need to give them, then you don't want to have the opposite, maybe 10 days on their part. You want to have parity there. 60-60, 90-90, 120-120, long enough to transition patient care. Restrictive covenant. In states where there is restrictive covenant that is tenable, non-compete clauses come up. Are those non-compete clauses based on geography? If so, are they based on parishes? Are they based on counties? Are they based on mileage? Mileage could be very different. Missoula, Montana, it may be 120 miles from where you're practicing. In Manhattan, it may be a borough or a neighborhood. It may be blocks that measure where the non-compete may restrict future employment. The other piece to that is how long, what's the term? Is it 1 year, 2 years? Sometimes they write 5 years in, so you need to understand what that is since you've made an investment in that particular community. There are, and I have seen this recently as I get a chance to look at a number of these, opportunities to buy out the non-compete clause. So there's typically a dollar amount that's put into it if you want to buy out the non-compete clause, which could be a lot less expensive than going through legal counsel. So again, 17 pages, it's a lot of information. You need to read it. Everything in the employment agreement is negotiable, but you need to choose your battles. So which things are important for you and your situation, and those are the things that you might want to start to ask some questions and do some negotiating around. And again, get legal review. The final copy should be reviewed by a qualified legal consultant in that particular community that understands healthcare law and employment law in particular. Thank you for joining us for today's Pearl, and I wish you well in your endeavors.